Hey, it is Zennial Gamer, and this is take, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 of this stupid video. Today we're going to be talking about Siege. So, literally, I've recorded this video completely 4 times, and I've had audio issues with each of the 4. Anybody who's watched my channel for a while, you guys know I gave up my green room when my stepdaughter moved in, and I have not been able to get the audio and video stuff right, recording out of my home office without proper lighting and stuff. Crossing our fingers, if the audio is not great on this one, but it's good enough, we're probably going to go with it. My last take on this video, I nailed it, said exactly what I wanted to say without rambling for 5 hours. That's not going to happen this time, I'll tell you that right now.
20 minutes later.
Because I feel like this is a really, really important video for people in the Siege community or for people who enjoy Siege, and I'm hoping it gets some attention. So, with that said, specifically, what we're talking about today is what is good about Siege, what is bad about Siege, and how can we make it better. And before we get into any of that, I have to say a lot of this video I'm going to be talking about tourney level Siege versus G3, G2, G1, lower level Siege, fringe tourney. I'll use a lot of terms that it doesn't really matter. What actually matters is the fundamental concept that Siege is a different game based on the level that you're playing. A tourney level player isn't just playing at a higher competition or doesn't just have more monsters or better runes or no more counters. Many of those things are true, but we're literally playing a different game than a casual player who has a smaller box and less runes, but is also playing against another guild where the players have smaller boxes and less runes. And much more importantly, where everybody who's participating in that siege is trying to get something different out of it. It's that last thing that really matters here. And it's that last thing that sets up everything I want to talk about in this video. Because if you're playing basically what amounts to a different game, then you cannot create one single universal set of rules that applies to both. To me, Siege is the most strategically enjoyable part of Summoners. There is by far and away the least amount of RNG in Siege. And don't click away. I know some of you have been procced on 10 times. Some of you rage at Siege the way I rage at RTA. But if you really take a look at it, go talk to anybody with any tourney level experience. Fringe tourney guilds, their red line, which is like basically the lowest number. Their red line win rates this season, they're probably looking for 93, 94%. That means they're looking for people to win 94 out of 100 attacks. Top level guilds, red line's going to be 97%, give or take. 96, 97% as far as like the highest level tourney guilds. That's insane. You can't say that it's RNG based if people are literally winning more than 19 out of 20 attacks, right? There is RNG baked in to the game, to defenses, to offenses, to everything. And pretty much every single loss that occurs at tourney level Siege is going to be RNG based. But that's because of the RNG that was put into the defense intentionally, because that's the only way you can build a defense that has any possible chance to get a win, is to build it to trap something and then maximize RNG as much as possible. A little bit more to it than that, but that's pretty much the gist of it. But beyond that, if you ask any of those same tourney level players why they lost a given attack, they should never say RNG. The reality is that if you lose to RNG, it's because you lost because you failed to account for that RNG. You took a little bit of bad luck, but if you're bringing a 95% counter, it's going to lose 1 time in 20, and that's not RNG. That's just law of large numbers or math or variance or whatever you want to call it. Beyond that, I really love the fact that Siege gives you a reason to continue farming and building monsters. And the easier and easier they make it to get runes, because it is just stupid easy to get runes now, and it is stupid easy to get gems and grinds and artifacts. I understand I'm coming from a bigger spender's perspective, and it's not as crazy easy if you're free to play. There has been a bigger separation in the game. We've shifted. We're still, I would argue, we're still more pay to play than pay to win than a lot of other games out there, but we are a lot closer to pay to win now than we were a year, 3 years, or 5 years ago. But even if you're completely free to play, it is 100 times easier to get runes than it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago. It is 100 times easier to get anything than it was 3 to 5 years ago. They continued, and this is important, by the way. They need to do this for the continuation of Summoners War, because It's a 10-year-old game. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary. The bar for entry is way too high for anybody to ever start playing this game if they can't catch up, and you can't make up for 10 years unless it gets easier. It's called power creep. You can't make up for 10 years unless it's easier to get things, but the easier it is to get things, the more compression you have once you reach that end game stage. That's what power creep is. So with that said, the fact that, if you guys all remember the famous quote from Summoner's War is a marathon, not a sprint. Well, Summoner's War is, maybe it's not a sprint yet, but it is becoming like a brisk jog. It is no longer full on a marathon. It is much easier to get end game rune quality, or at least mid and late game rune quality, than it once was. It is much easier to get faster and all of that stuff. So if it is easier to accumulate all of that stuff, then we need a reason to keep farming and keep playing. And if anything, Comtois should be doubling down and tripling down on Siege, because that is the content that has the longest run out gameplay. The need to build dupes, and we'll talk about that later, but the need to build dupes, the need to have lots and lots of runes to put on Siege defenses, stuff like that, that comes out of Siege. Most people these days, I'm not one of them, y'all know how much I hate CC and how stubborn I am about handicapping myself in RTA by trying to play in Turn 2, but most people are just playing CC and RTA with their 12 fastest sets on 15 rune monsters, maybe 20 rune monsters. And once you've built those monsters and built those sets, there's not a huge reason to continue farming in comparison to what Siege provides. So those are the reasons I love Siege, and the reasons I think Comtois should love Siege and give Siege some love. So if you're at tourney level, again, now we're talking about tourney level. If you're at tourney level Siege, it is really time consuming because you may have 25 players that are all actively trying to get hits, and there are not 25 things to attack, and people are stuck waiting around for hours and hours and hours, getting one attack at a time or no attacks at a time. And that is, I mentioned earlier, burnout. That is what causes the tourney player burnout. A big part of it, anyway. I mean, there is a lot of, if you're playing at the highest levels of competition, there is a lot of testing, there is a lot of time that's involved for everything. But at the end of the day, it's the boredom of trying to get in hits, and particularly of trying to get them in at something that's not always convenient for your own schedule, whether it's due to work or family or real life or whatever the case may be. It's challenging to get all those hits in around a schedule that you can't always control. That burns people out, makes people want to play less or more likely to want to go casual. A big part of tourney level Siege is what we call macro. It's just basically the deciding of which order to take the towers in, which order to attack the opponents, how to protect your own towers. A fair amount of math and foresight and thought goes into it. It's a very draining position. There are not that many players in the game that are really great at macro, and there are not even that many players in the game that can do macro, so that puts a lot of pressure on one individual. Siege matchups in G3 are generally just effed up, and it's for two reasons. So if you have a 1v1v1 at the, again, I'm focusing a lot on G3 right now, but these concepts will apply out to all tiers of Siege in a minute, I promise. So if you have a 1v1v1 going on at G3, what's going to happen a lot of times is that you have two strong guilds matching up with one weak guild. In that situation, one of two things can happen. Two strong guilds will 1v1 each other, while the weak guild just sits on the sidelines and waits for them to run out of attacks. Then the weak guild takes over the map, and they get first place, while the two stronger guilds finish second and third. Or the two strong guilds will go and bully the weaker guild until the weaker guild runs out of attacks, and then the two strong guilds will fight each other 1v1, and they'll take first and second. One way or another, either there's a really imbalanced outcome, or it's really unfun and unfair for one of those three guilds. Or you may have one guild that is really strong matching up against two weaker guilds. That guild will wind up dominating the entire siege. Again, not a lot of fun for the other players. Or that guild will get 2v1. Not a lot of fun for that guild. Or sometimes you have two strong guilds, 2v1 a weak guild, however you want to split it. It's just a very outdated system. And the point changes after a siege are also problematic, because when you have a lot of guilds that are compressed in points, a guild finishing third place can drop a lot of spots. And so if you're in the lower G3 or you're in the G2 ranks and you finish G3 because you finish third, not G3. You finish rank 3 in a siege because you get a bad matchup, you wind up dropping down to G1. Totally unfair for them. What we're going to talk about is how do we make siege better? Well, to start with, I spent a huge portion of the start of this video talking specifically about tourney level versus G3 versus G2, G1. We need to recognize that we are playing different games. That's what I said at the start. Tourney level siege is a different game entirely than G3 level siege, which is still a different game than G2, which is a different game than competitive G1, which is your top few hundred G1 guilds that are trying to get to G2, where the majority of players are active and tryharding and learning, which is different than casual G1, which is your next like 1,000 guilds. Each of those tiers plays the game differently and wants different things out of Siege. And if we're ever going to fix Siege, we need to separate things and have different sets of rules. So I'm going to start that out. I'm just going to lay that out there right now. If we do not break the game up so that the different levels or tiers of Siege, everything else I say in this video is pretty much a moot point because none of it would work, because none of it works universally among the game. And we're probably going to see tournament level Siege die because we're seeing an exodus of players. I mean, the game content will still be there, but too many of the strongest players are leaving, and overall, just not enough people are going to be engaged to make it competitive and enjoyable. So, what do I mean when I say separate Siege? Well, I mean, for starters, G3 Siege would have one set of rules. Now, I'm not separating tourney here because the point of G3 is everybody's competing to get to tourney, but we would separate somewhat, to a certain extent, the matchups within G3. So what I would like to see is all G3 sieges be 1v1 matchups on a one-day siege with either 30 or 45-minute towers. Big disclaimer here, a lot of this stuff just simply needs in-game testing. So before you guys like hammer me in the comments, understand I'm explaining conceptually what I think would work. Still need to test it, and somebody still needs to run the math behind it. So I might be off by, a percentage or a few minutes or something in these general ideas. I'm throwing this out there for discussion. But whether it's 30 or 45 minutes, and the big reason I think one of those two numbers may work is it's a question of macro and how much of a drain it would be on the macros to do 30-minute towers. I think most tourney level players would prefer 30 minutes. But I don't know if tourney level macro guys would want 30 minutes. So one or the other, 30, 45-minute towers, one-day sieges, let things move along quicker, let people be more engaged and play more frequently and attack more frequently. You'll get more people re-interested and reinvigorated in tourney level siege. By doing 1v1 stuff, you get rid of all those things I talked about that are problems with matchups, and you're able to better control the point gain and swings and also better control the matchups. So here's where I would differentiate a little bit between tourney and G3. I would say if you're in the top 4 ranked guilds, you can only match guilds that are ranked within, 8 to 10 spots of you. So like rank 4 could match down to rank 12, but rank 1 could only match down to rank 9, something like that. Still randomized matching, so you're not just fighting the same guild over and over, but let's put it in a smaller range of guilds that can match up. If you're outside the top 4, make the matchup range 15 or so spots. So rank 5 could match down to rank 20, rank 8 could match down to rank 23, randomized within there. So if we do all this 1v1 stuff, then we can also implement, well, whether or not we do the 1v1 stuff, we can implement the next thing I would suggest, which is more special towers. Comp2 brought special towers into the game. I feel like it's got to be like 6 or 8 seasons ago. I don't even know. It's been a while. And they did nothing with it. They left it in there for tourney. The concept of special towers is really cool, but the application is just that both guilds save them to the end and then you place them for point gain. If we're ever going to truly make defenses challenging, it will be through special towers, because at this point it would literally be impossible to create monsters that brought balance to defense without, like, every time they do try and buff one random monster for siege defense, all that happens is that monster gets placed in every siege defense. There are not enough different kinds of threats that you can place. Like in this game, in the current meta, At higher level Siege, it's pretty much impossible to run a defense without speed lead, even if you're using like Young Chol or one of those super bruiser units, because it's too easy to then just like do a double ignore thing with like the old OBB, Odin Bastet Bethany type comps, or double battle angel Adriana, double battle angel Kali. Like there's so many defenses where you could just snipe the two units paired around the Byung, because there is only one Byung. So you put Byung on a defense, he's the only one that can't get sniped. You just snipe the two around him and win the 3-1. So every defense is still required to have a speed lead, even if it has Byung, and that limits the types of configurations that you can make, because Byung doesn't have ignore defense, he doesn't have defense break, and it's just very limiting. So you see a lot of very similar defenses. Even if some of those defenses wind up being pretty decent, it's just not a lot of variety. So if we're going to get variety, there's one of two things that can happen. You can either buff a whole crap load of monsters. That's not going to work because it breaks the balance in RTA, potentially breaks the balance in PvE. It really can break the balance in non-tourney level Siege, where people don't have the ability to counter godlike monsters because they don't have infinite boxes. It's not going to happen. It wouldn't work, and Com2S would never do it. So instead, let's give those monsters buffs for the duration that they're in the tower. Open up special towers. Give G3 guilds. And again, I said I don't know the math here. I don't know exactly what works, but you figure 250 attacks in a siege means there's 50 tower takes. So give G3 guilds 25. You also start with 12 bases. So there's 25 takes plus the 12 you start with. So you're going to place defenses 37 times in the siege, assuming you win 100%. Means you're probably going to place defenses in 33, 34, something like that. So give us, about 15 towers, special towers. So about half the towers we place, let us make them special towers. And then open things up. Get creative with special towers. Imagine a special tower where all three monsters' leader skills were in play. Or, so you could have speed lead, HP, defense, or whatever. I could name all sorts of stuff that range from like crazy broken to relatively mild, and everything in between. A special tower where there was no cap on resistance. Old throwback to the days when I used to advocate for letting monsters get to 200 resistance. But I still think that would be cool. So there's no cap on resistance. The attacker is capped to 85 accuracy, but 100, I guess. But the defender is not capped on resistance, so you can run 200 resistance. Have a special tower where Leo's passive is in effect. You name it, we can do it in a special tower. We can test it out. And that would allow guilds to start to truly cater defenses to those special towers. Because I'll be honest, in tourney, we don't do that. We know there's only one special tower of each. There's like 4 kinds of special towers going into a tourney round. And most of the time, we're just going to place those somewhere that it doesn't make sense for the opponent to attack. So if we don't expect our special towers to get attacked, why would we bother coordinating defenses for them? So instead, let's make it so that you can select from a variety of different types of special towers, choose which of those special towers to place in which base, including bases on open, by the way, like Tower 10 Rush, or like the bases that you start with. Let's have special towers in them, or the ability to do so strategically. The guild would choose where and when to place them, and then we could build defenses specifically for those towers. That would mean that you could attack the same defense 3 times, and it would play completely different based on the tower it was in, which means you couldn't spam. You wouldn't necessarily automatically be able to room swap, and it would open up all sorts of interesting avenues for offense and defense. It would completely change them. Now, that would be absolutely busted OP broken at casual level Siege. If you made defenses super, super powerful, it would just break casual level Siege. So the basic idea here is that the higher your rank is, the more special towers you get. Maybe C3 gets 1 or 2 special towers. Maybe C3, well, I guess C1, C2, maybe all Conqueror gets 1 special tower. All Punisher gets 2 special towers. Or maybe Punisher 1, Punisher 2 gets 2 special towers. P3 gets 3. G1 gets 4, but then as you move into higher ranks of G1, maybe you get a 5th. G2 gets 7, G3 gets 10, and the top 20 get 15. Again, some of this has to be practiced on through testing, and some of it needs to be mathed on through the developers, people who have access to the game code, people who have access to the volume of analytic data that I don't. I'm proposing the concept. Now, I've repeatedly said that stuff should be done through testing. Well, the reality is, we all know Com2uS doesn't have a test server. I do believe they test their stuff, usually before they bring it in. But I don't think they have enough testers. I don't think they have the capacity to have enough testers to code something and then figure out exactly what the impacts are going to be when 500,000 people start to mess with that code. There's not enough. So a test server is never really going to happen, not for a community like this, not for a game like this. Instead, I have a different idea. I propose a second type of siege, Interserver Siege, along the lines of Interserver Guild War, with a caveat that it would only be 10 to 15 players per guild, or maybe you could register in one of several different leagues. So maybe there'd be a 10, 15, 20, and 25 player league. You could register whichever one you wanted, depending on if enough guilds participated. Maybe you don't have 5 different leagues. Again, some things to learn through testing and through the math behind the game. But it wouldn't have a lot of big prizes. It would not be mandatory or something you felt like you had to do. It would provide more siege for the people who enjoy siege. So you would do an extra 2 sieges a week on off days, probably one on Saturday and one on Wednesday. So, because right now we have siege Monday, Tuesday, and in this new proposal that I'm putting out there, it'd be 1 day siege. So it would be Monday, Thursday only. But right now we have it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So you put the Interserver Siege as a 1 day siege on Wednesday and Saturday. Regardless of what level of siege you're in, you'd never have 2 going simultaneously. Smaller sieges that would be inter-server along the lines of World Guild Battle, we would have to have some sort of time selection. You could either choose the time that you wanted to register for. We have to be careful not to get too complicated and have too many leagues, because I'm saying variable sizes and times. So you find the balance. Maybe your registration can be for like 10 or 20 players, and then it can be for like 12 p.m. global time or 12 p.m. Europe time. And just those 2 servers would have core time zones, because like a lot of Asia server is fairly close to Europe. It's closer to European global server, things like that. But pick 2 or 3 time zones, pick 2 or 3 numbers of players so you don't have an infinite number of combinations. Prizes from it would be really small, like not even T-Mogs, maybe just, I don't know, T-Mog stones. But secondarily, and however very importantly, all changes that would impact Siege meta would be brought into Interserver Siege first, with the intentional idea being Interserver Siege would do like 1-month seasons, no tournament, not designed to be super competitive. It's designed to be a secondary siege, but it would be a testing ground for changes that we wanted to bring in that would greatly impact the primary siege. So you want to add a new type of special tower, all monster. What did I say before? All three leader skills. So we added a special tower in Interserver Siege with all 3 leader skills in effect, and we see how OP it is, how busted it is, how people counter it, and then we make the decision of whether or not it should be in the real. So that's it, guys. That is the gist of my proposals. I propose that we start to create and implement new rules based on rank of siege. We add a secondary concurrent test server style Interserver Siege, and we use that to determine exactly what we can do to bring balance to the main siege, starting with introducing more special towers, 1v1 siege at higher ranks, a slightly more balanced overall point system that reduces the probability of sieges dropping disproportionately quickly and taking the fun away from people in the next rank below, and overall just trying to make siege more competitive. 97% win rates are just silly. 95%, 92% win rates are probably just silly. We should be getting ourselves back to a point where, not through just straight RNG and getting luck sacked, but through the fact that it is possible to build strong defenses that can confuse people and cause them to make mistakes, where we're seeing 85, 80, 88% win rates. I don't know exactly where the number is. I feel like it should be somewhere in the 80s. Partly because if you get down to 60s, you're talking like RTA is 50. I don't want to see Siege go the route of RTA and just be straight RNG, rage at the world type stuff, but I want to see it be challenging again. And so let's get that kind of upper tier tourney win rate red line to be in the mid to low 80s by allowing guilds to be creative and build more challenging defenses, not that can luck sack you, but that you've never seen with those specific types of variations. So imagine putting Carcano on defense where he ignores damage on win. Instead of ignoring damage reduction effects, he just ignores defense. Imagine a Carcano that ignored defense on win. All of a sudden, Windy can't counter Carcano. All of a sudden, Carcano's usable again. If you didn't have Windy, then, well, if you didn't have Windy, like half the monsters in the game would be good on defense again. That's why we all want to see him get nerfed. But that doesn't solve the only problem. Windy is just one of many problems. But if you have a special tower where Carcano can ignore defense, people have to learn how to counter him without using Windy, and all of a sudden the dynamic of that defense changes. So that is the entirety of my pitch, guys. If you are still watching the video this far in, you've got to smash the like button, guys. You got to give it that thumbs up. Please drop a comment, and then please go write a post on Reddit, because I'm giving you all homework. If you guys have ideas for what more special towers could be, throw them in the comments, have some fun with it. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you on the next video. Fingers crossed the audio worked this time. And we'll see you in the next video, guys.